Hi, Timothy.
Everything's up. Hey, how's it going?
Good. I just had a lengthy talk with Matilda. Fairly interesting.
What was the sum of it?
The sum of it is she's coming from a highly academic background. She primarily wants to focus on mapping knowledge for academic knowledge, as in like replace the publication process and the reviewing process. She's taking a break from academia to actually fix academia before she wants to go back, which is fairly interesting. So it's another frustrated academic, you could say.
Right.
It was interesting. I definitely recommend you reading through the publicly available information on what she's doing.
I mean, I had read some of it. It seemed like it was focused a lot on principles.
What do you mean by principles?
I have to look at it. It was more like codes of behavior or
no.
Together.
She has a model in mind. She has a conceptual model in mind. She has tested it with previous with academics to try to model things, just like we're discussing model. And her model is different from ours in several ways. And in that sense alone, it would be interesting. But yeah, to instantly throw her into discussions at CDL will be complicated.
Right.
So I might have another meeting with her to first see where she stands on that. I think she's pretty convinced of the model she has mapped out conceptually, but she hasn't really built it yet. So it's more like
where would you say are fundamental differences? I mean, I guess she's not only focused on claims for one thing, right?
Yeah, that is the. I think she's focusing more on the superset, how it would work in an academic context, and the communicating academic content also to end users, like everyday users. So I think it's more like Marc-Antoine that wants to do more, I think. Whereas especially
it's both more and applied, right? It's more encompass everything, but also with a specific application of that.
And from my current understanding now, I would say that, for example, what I'm trying to do with Socrates is a subset of what she wants to do, and I think it would be beneficial for her to build what she wants to do on top of something like Socrates. But she doesn't really get that yet. And maybe that's wrong. Maybe it
sounds like it's the same argument you're having with Marc-Antoine about what's on top and what's
exactly.
Yeah.
But no, highly interesting. I think at some point we should have a meeting with her.
Right. Yeah, we have to figure out all our differences.
Well, not all are, but we can focus on the current differences. You guys talked process. I didn't see the video, but what was that about?
We didn't talk process. Did it say process? I don't know. We didn't talk about anything really right now. I kind of just threw out some thoughts I was having recently around blockchain.
Blockchain.
There's two thoughts. One is, what are the features of blockchain that I think are important to the CD, and the other part about it is how it's like, if I just took off with this idea, I had nothing to do with my life, but do this idea and were to start from scratch, I would totally pitch it as a blockchain project, because there's so many blockchains out there that have huge foundations now with money to spend and throw at developers because they're trying to promote their solution, their blockchain in their community, right? And it's the perfect thing. There's so many ways it fits, right? And so to me, that's the best funding approach. But then you're tied to using a blockchain for the solution in some way.
I don't know. I don't think blockchain is a solution to everything. But what do you think blockchain solves particularly for this project?
Well, Marc-Antoine gave good discussion around, the more federated approach and distributed web and specifically CRDT solutions, but that provide a lot of the same features, right? But the features that match are permanence, resilience, permanence, and
decentralization, probably. So I presume you have lots of the decentralized blockchain in mind.
Yeah, decentralized, and and also censorship resistance.
But I mean, those are all
but-
non-functional, and that's why, I mean, yeah, sure, ideally it runs on blockchain, but those are all non-functional requirements. And to me, I mean, we're struggling primarily with building the functional stuff. And for me,
Sure, but,
once
I
we
mean,
build something functional that people want to use, then move it to blockchain. That's my logical sequence.
No, that's always
of
been my
development.
approach. Well,
Yeah.
that's always been my approach. But the other thing that needs to happen is funding, right? And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, if blockchain is one way into that, yeah, I can see that.
yeah, it's a way to focus on the problem, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same, you know, it's the same thing that Jamie's always having to do is wedge her ideas into foundation calls for papers and pitches and things like that, right?
Well, one thing we already put on the backlog, I was talking with Mathilde, right, was to maybe schedule a talk about funding. Maybe that's one that would be useful to do in collaboration with CDL as a large, because I think conceptually, she wrote a white paper, by the way, I referred her to it, to CDL, of course. I think it's one of these other people again, and there's more and more of them, luckily. We share the same goals, the same philosophy behind it.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a growing movement or if we're finding more and more people who have been thinking the same way.
I think there's more, it becomes easier and easier to spot the problems with current media. And I think more and more people are coming to so more and more people are coming to the same conclusion, which is a good thing.
The killer, the way that the CD is a killer app, like one of the ways we can sell it to a lot of people, is it proposes a solution to the problem of the need for censorship, right?
Yep, exactly. And so that she shares the exact same ideas on that. And also like the resentment of fact checkers, or at least the problem with fact checkers as not the perfect solution to the problem, etc. So we're all
a solution
aligned
that begs the question, and it's both, you know, a whack-a-mole solution, and it begs the question, you know.
Yeah. So yeah, that could be one interesting idea, that we have another, because we've done this before. By the way, I must say, I still think the best funding model is I forgot his name. The best business model. Who was this?
It starts with a J.
He asked people to take a stand on claims and let the public pay for it. Who was this?
Right.
Was it James?
Yeah, James.
Yeah. I still thought it was so original, and people would pay for it. I believe him there, and it in the end, it's more of a Wikipedia model at that point, right? Like, yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
it's a bit sillier giving people in a position of power money, but then again, what is missing a lot is indeed that people take a stance, especially in politics. I think it's a good business model from a politics perspective.
I don't see it as a business model. I see it as a growth strategy, right? It's a way to kickstart a marketplace. But I think it would be a self-sustaining marketplace, because
no, I don't. Quite the opposite. I think this won't work as a growth strategy, because the only reason people would pay money is if you already have a big ass platform. So yeah, it's something that would work once you have a lot of users and you have a community. But I mean, who's going to pay?
No. I mean, where can you go to pay to have but you know, where can you pay to have
any medium? That's journalism. You just that isn't that this.
You can't to pay people who are well known in the specific experts in a specific subject, get out their opinion and all the arguments and fill out something on something that's there's no crowdfunding for getting.
No, but I mean the closest to that right now is media. I mean, that's why you have news articles where they interview experts and you pay to read those articles. That's the closest to that what we have right now.
Yeah, but
you pay for content created by a good journalist or by, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I see it as a growth strategy exactly because it's marketing, where you say, oh, look, you know, here is these two people going at it in a structured way over this subject, right? It's like intelligence squared, but much better structured and much more like ongoing down to the bottom. But you know, I think it's a self-sustaining market. It's a once you get the engine running, you don't need that sort of thing, because any subject that is important to these people, if this is the place where it will be decided by people, right? If people's opinions are going to be made up by the information that's in there, then the thought leaders are going to want to get in there and put in their arguments, right, to win.
Yeah, exactly. But either way, we don't have to elaborate on it. But we haven't talked about funding in ages, and it might make sense to if I invite her to make that the topic of the talk. I think that would be interesting. The only problem is funding for what, and that's where we're also struggling, by the way, just among us, right? We all want to work in the space, but there's still a lot of disagreement on what would be the thing we would ask funding for, other than we want to work on this.
Right. And the way I see it right now with the CD is I don't see any of us enough on the same page to work together on one thing, because we all kind of want to do slightly different things or in slightly different ways. So it would be hard to get funding for this project. I feel like this project's more like the W3C or something, where we're coming together to work out the commonalities.
And the question is, shouldn't that deserve funding?
Well, no, and then funding would be, you know, whoever manages to get themselves funded would build their vision, right?
I know that's a traditional way of looking at funding, but the whole thing is maybe, I mean, I personally find our discussions very useful and needed, and the insights we do share and gain, that is useful knowledge. And then it's maybe just the thing that needs funding is the disseminating of that knowledge. And it's not so much a system as disseminating what we're learning from one another. I'm just thinking out loud here. Maybe we need to take a step back, and that's what needs funding.
Because what I see is us each trying things our way, and that'll feed back into the group here, because it's essentially an experiment. Each person doing it their way is going to be experimenting and finding where it doesn't work and where it works.
Exactly.
We need both, I think, right? If you look at the W3C as an example, there's practitioners with their own systems coming together, and let's have interop, and let's have this is what I built, this is what you built, and let's try to agree on something. So this is very much that scenario that we're trying to.
I mean, yeah, but most of our discussions are about trying to find what is a common denominator of everything we all want to build, right?
But what I'm saying is, if we got funding for the projects, then we'd get, instead of talking about what we want to build, we talk about
talking about the concrete things that are
which
exactly
would be better, and we'd still get a much nicer anyway.
Yeah, and you get multiple diverse trials input from those. So okay, either way, I think that's a good likely topic if I invite her. But first, I'm gonna try to understand her model a bit better and talk through some other things.
I looked at the site, by the way, and oh my God, there's so much commonality with what we're trying to build. Especially
that's the first thing we noticed. It's like the same philosophy behind it all, essentially. Clearly. Even the same frustrations that I share with her, and it's there's so much commonality. There's one thing she mentioned though that's interesting in terms of you, Marc-Antoine. One problem that she faces is the ontology community trying to over-define everything, whereas her approach is more like starting with loosely defined things. But we agree on that as well. But it's interesting because she's been talking to a lot of ontology people, and it's very hard for her to convince her of this other approach where things are loosely defined.
It does sound like exactly the same thing, yes.
Yeah. So
No,
I thought it was
definitely.
interesting.
I want to have that conversation.
But I mean, we already talked a lot about it among us, and we do agree we need incremental formalization. And so that
Would've
she
been-
did.
Yeah,
Hmm?
it's just too late, but it would have been good for you to have done it on this link, because then we'd have a video of the conversation with him. But
Yeah.
maybe next time, yeah.
Yeah, but it was both you, I think, that stated let's have a pre-meeting separately, and so yeah, I mean, yeah. To come back what we were talking about, Timothy, are you still left with major questions, or do you think next meeting we can actually try to write up some new understanding in the definitions?
I mean, it's one of those traps where I feel like we've come to an understanding, and I know the moment we try to get into it, it'll be like, starting all over again. But I think, you know, I see where it's going to turn into a problem, but I think we both came to an agreement that there's a difference between a fragment that is a part of something bigger that needs provenance and just a media
Yeah.
thing.
So I
that
think
sits on
these are
something,
two
right?
things we need to define, I think, and then move from there. And then
I mean,
there's
even like even the image bites on its own. If you're talking about something as racist, you're going to try to bring in context, which means you're going to try to prove who made it originally and what their intention was behind it and things like that. So it is a thing without explicit context or provenance, but people are going to discuss things. But the debate itself isn't about.
no,
this
but
thing
the
located
misunderstanding in
in
the
that thing,
debate was
yeah.
a lot, I think, because your understanding of fragment was different. For me, it always included provenance, and for me, the whole distinction was whether or not users should look at the provenance or not.
Right.
And
No, yeah, I got that. Yeah.
so yeah, let's try to write it down on Wednesday.
Okay.
And then we can see whether or not that can resolve a discussion on the fragment inference, whatever it was, what the original user story was. Maybe we can rename it better then. Cool.
Excellent.
Cool. All right, guys, have a good weekend.
You
Yeah,
too.
you too. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.